Greetings, St. Michael's family. Welcome to another installment of Get to Know You Clergy. My name is Eric Lyles, and I have the pleasure to serve as the Associate Priest for Formation. That's Christian education for all ages. And I've been at St. Michael's about 3 years now. There's a lot of things I want to tell you, but I want to keep this succinct. So the first thing I want to do is I want to read to you a very brief overview of who I am. This is posted under the author page on Grow Christians. And I wrote this, I think, as an intro for my blog, which is Eric J. Lyles at WordPress or Blogspot. And basically the introduction just says this: Eric J. Lyles is a native of the Golden State with deep roots in the Lone Star State. He is a son, a brother, a husband, a father, and a dog owner. He's an Enneagram Type 8 with a 9 wing, also known as the Mama Bear, and a Myers-Briggs INFJ. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Texas A&M University. That's in biology, Master's of Divinity at Virginia Theological Seminary, and a Doctor of Ministry at the School of Theology at the University of the South. He plays a little guitar, enjoys traveling, cycling, hiking, and camping, an occasional cigar and distilled beverage. You can follow his ministry at St. Michael and All Angels in Dallas and through his blog, Preaching with Luke. So that's a little bit of an intro to who I am. I was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, and I grew up at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Bakersfield. I was baptized in the chapel on a Saturday morning, like we used to do back in the late 70s, before the quote-unquote new prayer book that came out in 1979. And we attended church almost every week and Sunday school almost every week. I was really formed as a child in the church. My biological father and my mother divorced when I was 6 months old. My mom remarried when I was 2.5, and my biological father died when I was 8. I really struggled to have a positive father figure in my life, but because I grew up in the church, I always knew that I had a Father in heaven who loved me and who was invested in my life and wanted me to be well and healthy and happy and to succeed. And I'm very grateful for coming up in an Episcopal church where that message was so clearly articulated. One of the things that I did while I was growing up at St. Paul's in Bakersfield is I sang in the children's choir, and I also played a musical instrument. Most of you don't know that I played the alto saxophone for 10 years, and I thought, kind of as a lark, I hunted down a tape of my college audition tape. I want to play a little bit of it for you now, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it pretty clearly. This is a piece called Creston's Sonata. I'm just going to play a few seconds or so. So there's a very quick recording of me playing Creston's Sonata. As I mentioned before, I played the alto saxophone for 10 years, and because of that tape and all the awards I'd won and competitions I'd been in over the years, I was accepted to Colorado Boulder with a scholarship also there in another place to play music. And unfortunately, about 3/4 through my senior year, I had a really bad falling out with my band directors, and playing the saxophone just wasn't fun anymore. I had spent a lot of time with it, and I guess in some ways I was bored. I was looking for another challenge, and so I really just stopped at that point. But again, music has always been an important part of my life, and I had the opportunity to play the saxophone in the church, St. Paul's Bakersfield, and be an acolyte and sing in the choir and all those things. And so it was a really informative part of my life. One of the reasons that I chose to go to Texas A&M University was that I did not have to play the saxophone there, because at that time, if you played an instrument and you wanted to be in a band, that meant you were in the Corps of Cadets, and that was not really up my alley on those days. But I did go to A&M, and I studied biology. I was pre-med. I wanted to do an MD, PhD. I thought maybe during high school and before and through half of college, that maybe my purpose and calling in life was to work to find a cure for juvenile diabetes, type 1 diabetes. And worked really hard in college, finished A&M in 3 years, did well on the MCAT, did all the things you're supposed to do, applied to med school, and God said no. Had a couple of interviews and all of those things. But while I was at Texas A&M studying biology, I had begun studying the Bible seriously in high school and continued that practice into college, and attended some great non-denominational worship services and continued to be involved in the Episcopal Church and Canterbury and all of those things. And some interesting questions began to arise about science and the Bible. And I have a clip from one of my all-time favorite television programs called Firefly that I want to show for you. And just a little bit of background before I show the clip. I'm going to hold up an iPad. Sorry that the technology here is not as stellar as it could be, but this clip from episode 7 has two characters. Shepherd Book, you will understand Shepherd as a reference to a clergy person, and River Tam, and River is doing some interesting things to the Bible. So here is the clip.
What are we up to, sweetheart?
Fixing your Bible.
What?
Bible's broken. Contradictions, false logistics. Doesn't make sense.
No, you can't.
So we'll integrate non-progressional evolution theory with God's creation of Eden. 11 inherent metaphoric parallels already there. 11. Important number, prime number. 1 goes into the house of 11 times, but always comes out 1. Noah's Ark is a problem.
Really?
We'll have to call it early quantum state phenomenon. Only way to fit 5,000 species of mammal on the same boat.
Give me that. River, you don't fix the Bible.
It's broken. It doesn't make sense.
It's not about making sense. It's about believing in something. And letting that belief be real enough to change your life. It's about faith. You don't fix faith, River. It fixes you.
So thanks for letting me share that clip. If you've not seen Firefly, it's such a wonderful television program. It got one season, it sort of has a cult following afterwards, and they made a movie called Serenity, which involves the same characters. You might know that our dog is named River, and we named River after River Tam, because the show is just so good. And I love this particular scene between Shepherd Book and River, where they're talking through the Bible, and she has identified some issues within Holy Scripture, some of which are familiar to us. I've been talking a lot in my preaching and teaching about how the Bible communicates truth. Every word of the Bible is inspired by God. It is living and active, and it is truthful. And it communicates truth about God and about us and our relationship with God and each other. But there are some details that if we read them like we were to read anything else, might cause us to stumble a little bit. And I remember very particularly in college reading Leviticus and the clean and unclean animal list. And there's a list of, the animals that are clean are animals that live in a particular place and act in a certain place. So fish are okay to eat because they swim in the water and they have scales. But seafood is not okay to eat because it doesn't swim and it doesn't have scales. And the same is true for birds. Like you can't eat an ostrich, although I hear they're quite tasty, because it has wings, but it doesn't really fly. It lives kind of on the ground instead of in the trees, etc. That's kind of some of the thinking anthropologists think about Leviticus and some of the things that come up there. But in the list of birds that you can't eat, the last one that's listed is a bat. And I'm like, a bat is not a bird. A bat is a mammal. Mammals give birth to live young and they nurse their young, and bats do that. And so we have to deal with that. If we want to read the Bible seriously, we can say, well, yeah, I think that probably at that time they understood that bats flew and other birds flew, and so they just classified the flying things together. Or if we're going to read it literally, we're going to have to figure out what to do with that. And so I hope that clip from Firefly connected with you in a meaningful way, particularly what Shepherd Book says at the end. Faith is not something that you fix, but faith fixes you. And that has certainly been my experience over the years. I wanted to share with you all, one of the things that you might already know is that I really enjoy fantasy novels. And I have been reading fantasy novels since I was a child. I started with The Hobbit and with some Choose Your Own Adventure books and maybe the Dragonland series. But in 7th grade, one of my classmates turned me on to this series, The Wheel of Time. The first book is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This came out in 1990. I was in 7th grade and started reading the series then. 23 years later, the final and 14th book of the series, depending on how you count them, came out many years after Robert Jordan, the author, died. Some of you who read George R.R. Martin's The Game of Thrones series live in the same kind of fear, although the HBO did take the series and gave it a conclusion, although I'm not sure how satisfying that was for people who are reading the books as they slowly come out over the years. But when the final book came out in 2013, and I finished it, I realized that other than my Lord and my biological family, that the characters of that book were the longest relationships that I had had. 23 years I'd been in a relationship with these characters, desperately trying to find out what's happening with them, following their story, reading and rereading these books multiple times. It brought me a lot of joy. But what I have discovered over the years, and I've tried to share this with you all through our series the last couple of summers in Lord of the Rings, and also in another series, the book called The Name of the Wind, is that fantasy can communicate really powerful truth to us. It comes at us sideways. And so it's easier for us to hit it. We don't resist it as much. And I've been reading a series this year. I'm about to finish the 9th book. I think there are 15 total, but I think this will be my last one. The author's name is Robin Hobb, and she's written, I think, 5 trilogies in this world. And this was a book in a short section that I wanted to read to you all, because I think it's very apropos to our current context as Christians in America and the things that we're going through. So you don't need to know much. It's a conversation between 2 main characters, and they're talking about how things have changed. And when they were children, they both lived in a city called Buckkeep. It's bound to change, Buckkeep. Change isn't a bad thing. Buckkeep as it wasn't a bad thing either, I replied grumpily. And the other character says this: but change proves that you're still alive. Change often measures our tolerance for folk different from ourselves. Can we accept their languages, their customs, their garments, and their food into our own lives? If we can, then we form bonds that make wars less likely. If we cannot, if we believe that we must do things as we have always done them, then we must either fight to remain as we are or die. So I share that with you just because it's such a profound, truthful statement about the state of the world that we live in and the importance of being open to the other. Christ is found in the other. That we don't know yet. We Christians are grafted into the story of Israel, and we remember that we were foreigners in a foreign land, and that we are called to welcome those that are different from ourselves into our lives, into our church, into relationship, and that we are transformed by those people. We are transformed through a process of change, and if we resist it, then we do face some dire consequences. And of course, America is the great melting pot of the world where so many different languages and people and customs and food and clothing have come together to make this great country. Unfortunately, we've seen a rise in nationalism and a desire for isolation recently, I think from fear. But what we learn is that when we do that, when we cut ourselves off from the other, we miss the opportunity to be in really profound relationship with other people. I want to share with you some music. Again, music has been such an important part of my life for so long and continues to be today. My favorite singer-songwriter, his name is Glenn Phillips. He does a show on Facebook Monday, Wednesday, Friday evenings. I think they're at 5 or 6 o'clock Central Time. He is on the West Coast, and he does them just to raise money for different charities, including last week he played a show to benefit the Central Texas Food Bank in Austin. So he's a great guy. He was the lead singer of Toad the Wet Sprocket, which is still a band, still touring, still making new music. They've got a new song coming out with an animated film later this year. And my all-time favorite Glenn Phillips Toad the Wet Sprocket song is called Windmills, and there's a reference to Don Quixote, the first verse of that song. But this is a song that I think has a lot to say about faith and questions and doubt. Glenn is not a person who ascribes to any Western religion or philosophy necessarily. He did grow up in a spiritual household, and there's some really deep spiritual themes in his music. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this song from my computer here. Hopefully it'll pick up, and I'm going to hold the lyrics up as well. We'll see how this goes.
There comes a time in life to pull on your coat, go outside, taste the vinegar you find, bitter life, taste the second time. It's a sweet surprise, sweet surprise. It's not that hard to figure it out. When there's no question, there's no doubt. I burned in effigy at time, senseless time, to view the miracle. The water isn't wine, and that was my crime. There's a face in the storm. We let it out to find its form, to shape a testament of will, strongest will, pride, humility, bitter pill, bitter pill, sweet surrender, oh my Lord. I never thought I'd see, not surprised, instead I find some shaking and cry, but laughing softly. There comes a time in life to pull on your coat, go outside.
So that's Glenn Phillips playing Comes a Time. A powerful song for me. There's so much great imagery in that song. Of course, the bitterness of life, that you try a second time and you find it to be a sweet surprise. Just the acknowledgement that there is pain and suffering, but that through it all, it is a gift. Life is a gift. This song, I think, asks some important questions of faith and belief in miracles and what's required of us. I think it acknowledges some deep searching from a very spiritual person. And so Glenn's music has always been and continues to be, again, for me, just really important. I do commend it to you if you like 90s sort of folk rock music. Toad is a fun band. They're not for everybody, but I really like what they did and what they continue to do. They have some new music, and Glenn continues to perform, does some solo shows again on Facebook, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and also through a venue called Stage It, which is basically where he plays from his home on Sunday afternoons. That one does have a little bit of a fee associated with it, but I commend that to you and wanted to share that with you because their music has been such an important part of my life as well. And I love engaging with singer-songwriters and their lyrics and the stories they're telling and the truth that they're communicating in it. I've got one more clip for you. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work because I'm going to show it on my television, which is in another room. So I'll stop the video and walk in there, and I guess I'll hold the computer up because I'm sitting talking into the computer screen, video and audio here. And I'll set up the clip, and then after it's over, perhaps offer a few words. The film, that clip that I'm going to show you, is from a movie called Dogma. And let me just be very clear. I do not recommend that anybody under the age of 21 watch any part of Dogma. The scene I'm going to show is very carefully curated. And for those of you over 21, I'm not sure I recommend that you watch the movie either. However, Kevin Smith, the director, I think really is, in a lot of ways, a director who is the voice for Generation X, which is the generation I'm part of. And his films have always brought me great joy. There's a lot of inappropriate humor in them. Dogma is a little bit more of a serious film in the sense that it deals with the questions of faith. There's tons of misinterpretations of Scripture, but there's some really interesting ideas in there that I think are kind of fun to think about. Chris Rock plays the apostle named Rufus, who is the 13th apostle, not to be confused with Matthias, who replaces Judas. And he claims to be left out of the Bible because he's black. But he also claims that Jesus is black in the film. And so they're having some fun with some very serious issues. And I really appreciate that. The scene I'm going to show, I think there are 6 characters total. You might know Jay and Silent Bob. They star in this film. Jason Mewes is Jay. And Kevin Smith, the director, plays Silent Bob. He just doesn't talk. He's briefly in this scene. And then the main thing I want you to pay attention to is that God is played by Alanis Morissette, the singer-songwriter, the musician. And the voice of God is played by Alan Rickman. And I hope many of you know Alan Rickman from so many of his great films. So I want to show this clip, and then I'll have just a few comments about it. This clip in particular is something I think about often when I think about God and the purpose. Why are we here? What is the purpose of our existence? I believe that God is Trinity, and because God is Trinity, God is relationship, and because God is relationship, God is love. And because God is love, God cannot contain God's love and relationship within God's self, and out of necessity of who God is, must then create. And God creates out of love, and for love, and in love, and God creates us. And I think that this clip shows just a glimpse of that and some other things. So I hope you enjoy it.
Where was she?
Imprisoned in a body. Bethany figured it all out. She's a clever girl, that one. Oh. Hang on a minute. You missed a bit. Well then, you ready to go back, Apostle?
You ready to make some of those changes I've been talking about?
We'll see. Muse, seems though you just had to get involved. You're welcome to return with us as well.
First, I gotta say goodbye to Bethany. Where is she?
Oh no.
Metatron, is she?
Afraid so. One of the drawbacks to being a martyr is that you have to die. But no matter. All is being taken care of.
How so?
Wax on, wax off. She can rebuild you. She has the technology. She can make you better, stronger, faster.
That's
A very relieved deity. You did well, little girl. I knew you'd come round. Your pan always does. So you might want to take good care of yourself. We're going to need you down the road.
I know. I'm the last Stallion.
Well, you're half right. You were the last Scion. Now, this is the last Scion. Can't put anything past you. Take care of that parcel for us. She has a world of work ahead of her.
Thank you for, I don't know, everything. God, there's a million things I wish I could ask you. Most of it all questioning what I'm sure is your great plan, and that would be really arrogant of me, I know. But there is one I need to ask, and I'm sure you get it all the time. How many opportunities like this will I ever get? Why are we here?
Didn't I tell you she was funny?
I hope you found some joy in that clip. It's been a lot of fun for me to share a little bit about my life and my faith journey with you. I hope that you've gotten to know me a little better, and I hope that we all get a chance to continue to grow in fellowship and relationship with one another. Thanks so much for tuning in. God bless you. Take care.